make it tonight. What we're going to be doing this evening, we are going to be looking at the MySeneca minimum requirements, and we're going to be talking about getting our courses ready, and some things we're going to look at are tools for communication, tools for content, and tools for assessment. We will have an opportunity for question and answers throughout, and we're going to do it a little differently. There's so many folks joining our session tonight that we've disabled chat, just because that would just become quite the hive of activity there and hard to manage. So we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We're going to be using Mentimeter, and that's a place where you can ask questions. So on your screen now, you should be able to see the code and the link that will allow you to ask some questions. So at any point tonight, you can go to www.menti.com, and if you enter the code 472659, you'll be able to ask your question, and we will stop at various points and have a Q&A session from there. And Andres has just posted that into the chat. You can still receive chats, but you can't post to the chat area from there. All right, so I do want to introduce to you my co-facilitator this evening, Andres Quintero, who will be monitoring the questions and chiming in at various points to help out this evening. So thank you, Andres, for joining us tonight. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a quick poll just to see how everyone's doing. And give me 1 second here. I just have to set up the poll. Now, if anybody's ever used polls in a synchronous environment like this, that's a great way to engage folks. The one issue with Blackboard Collaborate Ultra is that you have to write you can't do the polls in advance, so I have to write them as I'm going here. So just give me a second. I'm just putting in the last part. So here we go. I'm going to put up the poll. Hopefully you can all see it right now. And so our question is, how are you feeling tonight? So we've got excited, anxious, as well as can be expected, and meh. So go ahead and just click on one of the options there, and I'll reveal the results in a second. I can see many of you are answering away. And we'll just give you a couple more minutes. All right, I'll reveal the answers in about 10 seconds. So still a couple of you I can see that haven't answered yet, but that's okay. If you don't want to, that's fine as well. All right, so let's get a snapshot of how folks are feeling this evening. Here we go. We've got many are excited about joining us. That's wonderful. Some are a little anxious. That's understandable. Many of you are as well as can be expected. Well, I can certainly understand that as well, but thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. And we'll get started. And I think you're joining us tonight if you're new to Blackboard, or you're fairly new to Blackboard, or you just want a refresher on some of the basics in Blackboard and some of the stuff that you want to learn about in order to get ready for your online classes coming up this summer and perhaps later on into the fall as well. All right, let me close the poll. Thank you again for participating in the poll, and we will begin. So the first thing we're going to look at is the MySeneca minimum requirements. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen in a second, but I just want to go over those 6 things that we have to do in every course. And this policy is policy now at Seneca College. It's a policy of Seneca. And of course, it becomes so much more important as we go into the online environment to look at the minimum requirements and perhaps expand a little bit on those to help our students learn. So just to review, we do, and some of you have probably seen this before, so we do have to post an approved course outline and a schedule to our courses. We have to set up our grade center, post our contact information, make our courses available, use the announcements tool to post a welcome announcement, and to review with students how your course works and its contents and expectations. So let's get started with that. As I mentioned, I'm going to open up my screen, and so you can see as we go along what I'm doing. So give me just 1 second, and I'm going to share my entire screen here. Okay, there we go. So I'm sharing my entire screen because there's some pop-ups that will appear as we go along. So let me go out to here, and I'm just going to ask Andres at this stage, can you see my screen okay? And just let me know if the audio is okay as we get started with this.
Audio is good, and we can see your screen.
Terrific, thank you. So what I'm going to do is let's go right into one of my courses that I'll be teaching in the summer. And I've got a couple here in my next semester, and I'm going to go right into one of those and might as well start getting them ready for this for that semester, the summer semester, and make sure they adhere to the minimum requirements. So I'm going to go into my first course here. And what you'll notice as you get in there is your course shell has a menu on the left, and it has some pre-populated items that are there. And the other thing that you want to take a note of is the icons along the top here, which give us a lot of information, like student preview mode, making it the course available, and of course the toggle for edit mode. And we always want to make sure, in order to do anything in Blackboard, we turn the toggle mode on. So let me turn it off for a second, and just take a note as I do this. Take a look at these items like course information and course documents. What happens to them from the menu? They've got this little icon beside them that looks like a square with a hash mark around it. If I turn edit mode off, take a look at what happens there. So you'll notice that those have disappeared from my menu. So when edit mode is off, anything that any menu item or content area that has nothing in it is removed from the menu. So let me go and put edit mode back on. I'm just toggling. And now I get access to those tools again. And what that means is we just have to go and populate them with some information. And once we do, they'll become available to users. So one of the first things we might want to look at is that we might want to make sure that we have our outline and addendum available for students to take a look at. And generally, we use the course information link for posting information for managing the course. So that would be things like the outline, the addendum, any expectations you have, how to get started, documentation, etc. So let me go in there. I'm just going to click on the link, and I'm going to come into this area where I'm going to start to populate the course outline and the addendum. With edit mode on, you will see that you've got a number of tabs along the top that allow you to post content. This is a content area course information. So let's take a look at what we can do to build content. And the three areas that will do you, you can use over and over again and will be effective for you are item, content folder, and web link. Those three will do a lot of what you want to do in your course. We don't have to worry about all the other ones at this stage until you get a little bit more familiar with MySeneca and how it works. So now what I'm going to do is I have to post the official course outline. And we have a course outline system in MySeneca at Seneca that we can then post the link to that course outline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build content and add a web link. But the question will be, well, how do I access my official course outline? There are a couple of ways that MySeneca does that for you. For example, notice at the bottom of the menu, there is already a course outline link available to you. And if I click that, it launches and takes me to the name of my course and the course outline. That is a great backup for you. But what you'll also notice if I scroll down is that it's missing some information such as the evaluation criteria, etc. And that's because some of the courses have multiple schools that are used the courses, and so the information for around that might be different depending on the school that you're attached to. So let's go back. We do have the course outline there, which is great, but let's go back into the course information section and find the official course outline and then post that. Andres, I'm hoping you can let me know, can everybody see as I go to a different tab, they're seeing the pop-ups that come up? You can just let me know and I'll proceed.
So far, we have no issues, and we're seeing all your pop-ups. So you're good.
Thank you. Okay, so where do we find our official course outline? Well, we do have a Seneca College subject outline system. And here is the link to it if anybody's ever gone there before. You can also just do a Google search to get to where this subject outline system is. And it looks like this. Now, if I want to find my course, I just simply go up to the top and enter the code. MTH 158 is the name of the course. It's Introduction to Mathematics. And what I've done is I've found the course. Now, the other thing I have to do is select the school that is offering this course. And in my case, it's the School of International Business and Management. So when I click that, it gives me the official course outline. This is what we have to post for students. And if I scroll down, you might notice that there's additional information that wasn't in that original course outline link in the menu. So I've got things like the student progression and promotion policy, the modes of evaluation, etc. So that's the information I want to supplement the course with. So what I do is I just go up to the top here into the browser address bar, and I'm just going to click in there, and I'm going to just copy that URL. I can either right-click copy, or I can use keyboard controls such as Control-C for copy. So I've just found the outline. I'm making sure it's the right semester, summer 2020, right there, the right school, the right course. So then I come back to the course here, and I'm going to add that link. So I build content. I'm coming down to the web link tool. And how Blackboard works is it gives you a web form. You fill out the form, and then you click submit. Anything with an asterisk beside it, you do need to fill that field in. So this would be our MTH 158 course outline. I make sure I spell correctly. And then I'm going to paste that in there. I can either use my mouse right click, or I can use the Control V, or if on a Mac it would be Command V. You'll notice that the field doesn't show the entire link. Don't worry, it's in there, and we'll test it just to make sure. Another important point is to make sure that you name the link properly. Don't just if you just use Math 158, give it some context. So we make sure we say it's the Math 158 course outline. Now, some of the things I can do with this, if I look down, I can give it a description. I think the title is self-explanatory. And so one of the things that, because of the restriction in terms of real estate space online, perhaps students are coming with a phone, perhaps they're coming with a smaller screen laptop, is key information, of course, is critical, but you don't want to say too much that might interfere with them getting to the essential content. So be precise and explicit, but not redundant. Okay, I could attach things to this particular link as well. The other important consideration is to open in a new window. With any web link, highly recommended that you do open in a new window. And of course, we do want to permit users to view this content. You can to track if you want to. Generally, I don't, just because the only thing that tracking does is just say whether or not somebody's clicked the link. It doesn't say whether or not they've read it. And of course, because this is the course outline, I'm not going to restrict the dates and times. I want it wide open so students can come back and preview it at any time. So all I've done is put the title and the link in there, and I'm just going to go and submit that. Okay, so I now have my official course outline posted to my course, which is great. Of course, you do want to test it. And I'm going to show you a method to test I think we get in the habit of doing. You can always enter your course as a student in your own course. And you do that by way of the student preview mode. Up at the top right, you'll see this icon. It looks like a dot with arrows on top and bottom. And that allows you to enter the student preview mode. So if I click that, it's telling me at the top I'm entering student preview mode. And this is exactly how the experience that the students would have. So if you ever want to test your course to make sure it's exactly how students will see it, go into student preview mode. And then if I go over to course information, notice now that it actually appears in my menu because I've added an item to it. So if I click on it, there is my course outline. if I click the outline, hopefully it's going to open up into my course, the right summer semester, and the right school. And there we go. We've tested it. It's working fine. That's great. So I'm going to come back here. Once I'm finished with this testing, I can exit the preview mode. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep myself in the course just because it's useful. And you'll see later on as I start to build some items, useful to keep yourself in there so you can test it as a student. And then I'm just going to click continue. And then I'm back as a teacher. My edit mode is on and I'm ready to continue adding materials to my course. Okay, the other thing that we need to do in our course information is to add a weekly schedule. So I've already developed a weekly schedule and I've created it as a Word document and saved it as a PDF. So what I'm going to do is just add that document. And I'm following the template that the school has provided for me. And I recommend that you do that. If you follow whatever template your school provides, if your school didn't provide you with a template, just go with something that makes sense for you and your students. Okay, so I'm going to go back to build content, and this time I'm going to add an item. You'll notice that there is also the file option, and you might be asking, why not just use file? I find that the item option is more robust, and it will do everything that the file option does. So I just always stick to item. It's really handy. So I click on the item, and I'm going to call this then the Math 158 weekly schedule. Some of you like the terminology addendum. But an important thing too is the naming here is to give it context so that somebody, whoever's a student coming in and reviewing this or wanting to see what this is, they get the context from the title. I don't need to add some text here, but I'm going to attach the file. So I'm just going to go and browse my computer and find my weekly schedule. I've placed it in my webinar area here. And here it is. My summer course addendum. I've got it both as a Word document and a PDF. I'm going to upload the PDF right now. And the other thing too is just from an accessibility point of view, you could put both the Word document and the PDF. Remember, if students are online, they may not have access to the full range of Seneca software that's available to them. And so sometimes if you post a Word document, students can't see it if they don't have Word at home or haven't downloaded it yet or gone through that process. So posting an alternative version always helps. So here we go. I've posted my addendum. I'm going to let users see it. I'm not going to date restrict it like before and just submit. And there we go. I've started off, I got my course outline and my weekly schedule. And I'm just gonna, you can click it to make sure it works. You can go back in as a student to make sure it works. And I've done our first item on our MySeneca minimum requirements. Okay, let's move on. I know time is gonna be tight tonight. We're probably gonna be here for a couple of hours and we will have an opportunity for questions. Probably about 6:30 when I finish off with this section of the program, I'll stop and pause for questions. Might be a little bit later, might be a little bit before, but that's probably where we'll have that opportunity. But remember, you can always go to menti.com, enter the code that Andres has sent to you and ask your question there at any time. All right, next on the item, we need to post a welcome announcement. So how do I do that? Well, you'll notice in the menu that at the very top, we do have a link to the announcements link. I'll click on that. And again, it's an area that I need to make sure I have edit mode on. And when I do that, I have the option for the button at the top called Create Announcement. So let me go in and create an announcement. Okay, just like when we're adding content, we get a web form and we have to fill out the web form and click Submit. So we do need to give it a subject. So I'm going to call it Welcome. And then I need to post my message. Now what I've done is I've already gone in and created a message. I've just written it in a notepad document. Let me just go and find it here. There we go. Okay, so here's my welcome text. So I'm just going to take that out of there. And I recommend if you you do this, you'd use like a word processor or a notepad document just to write your announcements first, and then you can just cut and paste them into the session. Well, here, just to point out some key areas that you might want to do. First off, I always like to increase the size of the font. The default 12-point font I find a little bit small, so I'm just going to highlight it, click here, and bump it up to 14-point font. I think it just is more readable. The other thing for accessibility is I'm using an Arial font or a sans serif font. It doesn't have those extra little characters on there like print document, like New Times Roman would have. And the other thing is I'm using invitational language. I'm welcoming everybody here, glad that they can be with us, and I'm pointing them where to go. The course site will be our online home this semester. All key information will be here. Check in often. And I'm saying, where should I start? And I'm going to point them to a getting started section in the course menu. I'll show you that in a second, how to add that. But that's what I'm going to do, just so that they know when they first come in here, especially when they're online in the beginning of the summer, that where they should go, get started. It's got all the information they need to get going, etc. Also, I'm saying if you have any questions at any time, don't forget to look at my faculty information, contact information there, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions you have, and then looking forward to learning along with you this semester. Okay, so I've written my welcome announcement. I'm coming down here, and what are the options? Well, I could date restrict it, but I tend not to do that with announcements, and the reason is once I have a weekly announcement, and that's what I do, I post weekly announcements at the beginning of the week, whatever days works for you. I say, here's what's coming up, here's what the expectations are, here's what's due, those different things. So with students in an online environment, they always want to know, what am I supposed to do? When am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to do it? So all that information, if you can provide it on a constant, regular basis at a regular time, is very helpful. And the other thing I do is I send this out as a copy of the announcement immediately to everybody enrolled in the course. That way it gets pushed. It's one of the few areas in MySeneca where you can push information out to students. Okay, so I've got my announcement, etc., and I'm ready to submit it, and I'll submit it in just a sec. I just wanted to show you one other thing. Some of you that are new to Blackboard, you might see that you only have one row of a toolbar at the top. That sometimes can happen. If you need to get access to the additional tools available, just go over to the chevron, the double chevron on the right-hand side of that area, the message box, click it, and you'll get access to the other two layers. And of course, you have things there like adding attachments or adding an image. I find images are really handy too to add to announcements to give them a little bit more personal touch. Okay, I'm going to come down here. Now this course is going to be enrolling students very shortly. So I'm not going to send an announcement directly yet. I'm just going to uncheck that for now. I will come back and edit it, and then I will do it later on. But I just wanted to show you how you can get an announcement in there. So if I click submit, here it is. You'll notice that our welcome announcement is waiting for us on the announcements page. And the reason that we ask you to do this is because when students come into any course, if I come up to the top and turn edit mode off or go into student preview, by default the announcement page is there, and you'll see that if you don't have something there that tells students where to go, what to do next, they'll just see a blank screen and they'll say, oh, there's nothing here, and they'll leave without knowing what to do next. Okay, so we've done a couple of the things. We've posted our course information. We've posted the subject outline. What's next? Well, we want to get in there and make sure that students have a way to get in touch with us. So we do have here a faculty information link in our menu, and we want to populate that. So I'm going to turn edit mode on again. Then I'm going to come over to the faculty information, and I'm going to create a contact. That's going to be my information. And here you've got a form, again, that you fill out, and then you submit it. So I'll just go ahead and here and post in some information, just the minimum for now. I can always come back and edit this. By default, the only thing you actually need to do is put in your email address. But obviously, for things you want to give students as much information as possible. So one of the things here might be office hours. And especially with the courses in the summer, I think most courses are running asynchronously. That means that they're going to be not face-to-face type of opportunities, but you do want to perhaps have a face-to-face time at some point in the week for students to ask you questions directly through office hours. So maybe for me, it might be Tuesdays. 1 p.m., something like that, or you can give them a date range, those kinds of things as well. Any notes that you want, you can post there, and I might come back and flesh this out a little bit more. I do want to make the profile available. And one of the other things that I think is handy, especially for students in an online environment or anytime, is I can attach an image of myself just so students get to see it, my face, and they get that personal touch as well. I could also add a personal link. So let me just go and browse. I think I've got a file in here. Here's my profile pic. You'll notice up here that Blackboard has some restrictions about how big it should be. And usually the best option is to make it square. 150 pixels by 150 pixels is a good option. And let me just submit that. And here we go. So I've got my contact information. There's my email. There's my picture. And of course, I would go back in here and provide some more information, to give them a little bit more, maybe a bio about myself, maybe some other ways to contact me. Maybe if you're using social media in your course, you might have a class hashtag or something like that. Okay, so we've got the faculty contact information. The other thing that we do need to do is to make sure that we hide our total columns. We have to set up our grade center. Now, I'm not going to have time tonight to show you in detail how to set up the grade center, but I am going to show you a couple of things that are necessary when you start your course. And I'll just show you by way of the My Grades area. If I click on My Grades, which is a default menu item, you'll notice that I've got weighted total and total that are showing to students. We don't want to show the total and weighted total to students. Now, there is some debate about weighted total, whether or not to show that. The reason I'm asking you to hide them is because students should not know their final grade until after promotion meetings. And if you do have the total and weighted total columns showing, then if it's the end of the semester, and you've got all of your assessments graded, they can see what their mark is. And if it conflicts with what's presented at promotion meetings, there could be some issues there. So we tend to ask you just to hide these two columns. So how do I do that? Well, what we do is we come down below the menu is something called the control panel. And then in the control panel, we have the grade center. And if I click on the grade center here, I have something called the full grade center. Now, many of you have seen that before if you've been teaching using MySeneca, but let's go in there. Okay, and this is my breakdown. Right now, I'm the only person in the class right now is me as a student. When I created the preview user, it creates yourself as a student in your own course. Over here, I see the weighted total column and the total column on the right. Now, the weighted total column to hide is a simple process. With edit mode on, I just click on the chevron beside the title, weighted total. I click on it, and I can go in here and say hide from students. Make sure, by the way, one thing is don't hide it from yourself, because that'll just hide it from yourself, not from your students. Now, if it's hidden from students, you'll notice the red line showing here, circle the red line through it, meaning it's not showing to students. So that's the weighted total column taken care of. The total column is a little different. You'll notice it has a green check mark beside it. That means it's actually what's called an external grade column. And that's used, we don't use this here at Seneca, but many folks that might have like parents coming in to view their children's grades in a high school, they would use this external grade column. But we don't, so we're just going to disable it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the chevron beside it. It behaves differently than all other columns. So I'm going to come up here and edit the column information. So that's how I have to hide it here. Don't click hide from instructor view here. It's edit the column information. So I click that. It gives me this form, the total column. All I have to do is come down to where it says the options, and I'm going to show this column to students. No, I'm not going to show the column to students. Make that no, and then submit. These are not done by default in MySeneca, so that's something you do have to do for every course that you go into. So now I've hidden both the weighted total and total columns. The circle with the red line through it tells me that's successful. Let's check. Let's go to My Grades, make sure. And there we go. We have no grade showing yet. As I build the content, you'll see that graded items will be in here. We absolutely want you to show students each individual item their grade for that. That's part of the requirements, minimum requirements of MySeneca. Okay, so what I've done here, now I'm noticing the time, and I think we're finished with the minimum requirements. So I've created let's just review. I created the outline. I posted that as a web link. I added the weekly schedule as a file item, as an item. I would perhaps, I think when I'm doing this, I would add some additional files in here, like how to get started, all that kind of information. I posted the announcement here and provided students with a way of how to get going with the course. I have then changed the grades so that they're not showing the weighted grade and the total grade. That's done. And I've added my faculty contact information. So let's say that everything I was ready to go. I've done everything I need to do to get the course ready. I'm now ready to make it available. Well, the easiest way to do that is simply at the top here. You'll notice that there's this little, looks like a padlock. It's the icon to make your course available. So right now the red means it's not available. If I click it, it now turns into an open padlock. So I mean the course is now available for students. It's a toggle. So it's now ready to go. And that completes my minimum requirements. So if I came back out of the course, go back to my Seneca home, you'll notice my course here, there isn't this yellow sign beside it that says it's not available. This course is now available to students. Okay. Now there's no students yet to go in there. They're not rostered yet, but it is available. And later on tonight, I'll probably make it unavailable because I want to add a lot more to it before I make it available for students. But that takes care of the minimum requirements. So let me come back out. I'm going to go back over to our shared session here. I'm going to come back to our files here. And I know you're seeing the dreaded, I'll just stop that because you don't get the mirroring effect there. And we're going to go and share where we left off. Give me 1 second. And now you'll see we can pause for questions. So, Andres, are there any questions for me about the minimum requirements?
So we have a few questions. The very first question is very simple. Will you be sharing the slides?
Yes, we will. On the academic continuity site, and you'll see at the end I have some help information. You will see links on how to get to that information. So check the academic continuity site. We'll post the recording up as well. We'll post all the information you need. Plus, I'm going to give you a link to the online module that walks through exactly what we just did. So if you need a refresher. Okay, any other questions?
We have a question about content. Since you mentioned the posting of files, is there a way that I can lock that file so my students cannot change it or make a copy of it when I post it?
Well, if you're worried about students making changes to files, the best thing then would be to save them as PDF documents. That way they won't have, it's not an easy process to change that content. So consider any document that you post, students need access to them obviously for learning, but make them PDFs if you're worried about that.
And I have another question, if maybe you can do a quick recap or show again how to do the search for the outline on the SSOS page. And I will share the link once again for that outline website on the chat for everybody.
Great. Yes, I will do that. So when I come back in to our next unit, I'll just start with a quick refresher of how to search your course. Any other questions?
I think that's it for now. There are a few other ones, but I don't want to get ahead of our schedule, so I'll leave them for now.
Okay, terrific. Let's move on then. So now we're going to look at getting our course ready. Well, we've started that process already. We've done the minimum requirements. But what are some things that we need to think about as we're looking to the online environment come in a couple of weeks? So I'm going to start with communication tools. communication is critical. Okay, we need to have a regular way to get in touch with students, etc. And I'm going to just give you a little bit of something to think about. There's lots of these frameworks that you can look at, but I think this is really important for the online environment. And it's something called the Community of Inquiry Framework, also known as the presences. So what it means is that we've got teaching presence, social presence, and cognitive presence, just like in any classroom as well. So what you want to do is be present, especially early on as the teacher. So teaching presence is so critical. Be there early, be there often. You're setting the standard, the expectations, communicating with students. Make it a social environment. What ways can we can engage social interactivity? And of course, you want to have students engage with the content cognitively, because that's what they're there for. They're there to learn and reach the learning outcomes. So just something to think about there. The other thing is modality. In my course that I'm going to be teaching in summer, the idea is that we want to make it mostly asynchronous, which means not at the same time. So when you think about your course, it's no longer like revolving around the class. So when your class is on a Tuesday, you're thinking, well, I got to get everything ready for Tuesday. More so, it's about getting ready for the beginning of the week, and that students have that whole week to engage with your content at any time that it meets their schedule. So we want to make it as asynchronous as possible. So stuff is there, and activities are waiting for them. The other thing is in our school, it's we want to have a little bit of synchronous time as office hours. So it's mostly asynchronous with a little bit of synchronous office hours, perhaps 1 hour a week where they can come in and have a mini lecture or ask questions in real time. So that's something to think about with your teaching modality. So it impacts your design there. Okay. So let's get into that. I'm going to go over a couple of tools. I'm going to talk about announcements, which we already have covered, and why we would use that, email, discussion boards, and web conferencing. Now, I won't go in demo web conferencing tonight. You're seeing it being used as one way tonight, but there will be additional sessions beyond the basics. If you'd like to sign up for those, where we will go over and talk about how to facilitate online sessions, that sort of thing. Okay,
And if
Andres, you have a question?
I just wanted to interrupt and sort of give a quick tip over here, since you're mentioning web conferencing. ITS is currently working on some sessions, some small webinars or training sessions for the different web conferencing tools. And that will also include Collaborate, Big Blue Button, and WebEx. I don't have an exact schedule of those sessions yet, but I know that there's going to be an announcement soon.
Great. Thanks, Andres. Yeah, so check the ITS site, check the academic continuity site. There will be lots of, and check MyPD if you have access to it at the moment. There'll be lots of sessions coming up. Okay, so I'm going to go back and share my screen so that we can move on to 1 second. Okay. All right, going back to share my entire screen. Okay, so here we are. Andres, let me know if audio is good and if you can see my screen.
So far, we're good.
Great. So we talked about announcements already, and if I went into my course, I've got this weekly announcement, a welcome announcement here, and then I would post weekly announcements. And it's a great tool as a check-in for students and keeping the lines of communication open. And in your case, it's more pushing information out to students on a regular basis. Let me just show you as an example. Here's the course, same course I taught just this particular semester, this past semester. And here's my announcements. Although each week it's a look at what's coming up, what do we have to do as we're going through the course. I know I'm scrolling through it quite quickly, but what happens here is that you have this kind of, a student at the end of the semester will get this kind of study review about what the course is all about. So that's one way, I think, to use announcements effectively from that perspective. So I'm just going to scroll back up. Pardon me for racing up to the top. So I just wanted to show that to you to finish off that kind of announcements. And we've seen how to add an announcement, etc. Okay, so what other ways can we communicate with students in the online environment? Well, another great tool is email. And I highly encourage you to have email ready so students can email each other, can email you. And email as a complement to the announcements is a way to, you can broadcast out something, or you can talk privately with a student via email. Okay, so how do we enable the email tool? It's not in my menu at the moment. So I'm going to turn edit mode on. And when I turn edit mode on, if I scroll over to the left of the, above the menu, you'll notice that I've got some additional icons. Andres, I just want to make sure everybody can see my cursor. Is my cursor available to see?
Sorry, I forgot I was muted. Yes, yes, I can see your cursor and it's working fine.
Great, thank you. So when I've turned edit mode on, over the far left, I've got this plus sign, and the plus sign allows you to add items to your menu. So what we're going to do is add a tool. Email is a tool, just like announcements or something like that is a tool. So what I'm going to do is scroll down to the tool link, click that, and I get a mini web form. And then I'm just going to type in the name. It's going to be email. The key here is you want to make sure that the type of tool matches what you want it to do. So what I want to do here is have email. If I scroll down, you'll see there's a number of different options for tools to add. I just want to make sure it's email. The name doesn't have to match exactly. It just has to be the right type of tool. You want to make it available to users. So I click that checkbox and then I submit. And at the bottom of my menu appears this link to email. Now what I want to do is I want to bring it up with my other kind of communication tools. I tend to have communication tools together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click there and drag that up to just below announcements. So I've got some communication tools at the top. Okay. How I did that is if you move to the left, you'll see that it changes to a compass point navigation cursor, and you can click and drag it anywhere up and down the menu. So let's go into the email tool. It's available now for student use. I can then email all users. So if I click here, I'll get the form and I can enter a subject and I can enter my message to broadcast to everyone. I use this in case something comes up during the week. So my announcement at the beginning of the week talked about what's coming up and what to do during the week and what's coming up. Maybe something changed. Maybe our guest speaker is now coming and we want to create an online synchronous session for a little guest speaker get together. So maybe I'll broadcast that as an email rather than do another announcement. Okay, so I'll cancel that just to show that to you, but I just want to also point out that you can also email all groups. Maybe you've got groups set up in your course and you just want to email all the groups or select groups. So you can do single select users. So some folks missed the quiz. You want to get in touch with them and say, hey everybody, I noticed you missed the quiz. Please get in touch with me and we can arrange maybe some alternatives or something like that, whatever your policy is around that. So there's some really handy items that you can do. If I do want to go to single select users, I can just go in here and click the student that I want to talk to myself in this case, enter a subject, enter a message, and then I post it. One thing to note about email, by the way, this email tool, if you select more than one student, it's like a blind carbon copy. The students don't see who else you've sent it to, so that's a handy feature there. Okay. So there's email. It's another communication tool. Another tool that you might want to look at, obviously web conferencing might be something that you want to have office hours. So let me just go and add that to the menu. So maybe I'll just come up here. I'm going to add another tool here, and I'm going to call it online office hours. Oops. You could also call it something like your online classroom if you want. It doesn't have to be office hours. It could be online classroom. The type of tool I'm going to use, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, the tool we're using tonight for my online office hours. There is also Big Blue Button. So Big Blue Button is a very similar tool, and it's your choice, whatever you feel comfortable using for synchronous communication with students. So I'm going to click Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, make it available to users, submit, and then I'm going to bring that up with my other tools. I did notice that I was supposed to go back and show how to get these course outline give me a second. I will show that at the end of when I finish off with the communication. I have noted that, and I will get back to it. Okay, so there's my online office hours. If I click that, it'll take me to the Collaborate tool. You'll notice that every course in MySeneca has a room available. You don't even need any other rooms than this one if it's just going to be online office hours or just a once a week get together. You can create additional sessions. Again, I'm not going to show that to you at the moment, but some of the tools or settings that you might want to look at. If I go over to the far right where it's a circle with 3 dots, I click on that. It gives me some session options. Maybe I want to look at editing the settings. And a couple of things you can do here is we're recommending that you turn guest access off unless you really need it. And there are some instances where you do need guest access, but turn it off just in case, so people that aren't registered in your course, if they come across the link, might be able to come into your course when you're not expecting them to come in. So turn that off unless you actually need it. If you do need guest access, make sure your guest roles are participants. Don't make everybody come in as a moderator or presenter. Keep them as participants. That way, they can't do much when they get in there until you're present. Your attendee, so I'm going to turn that off for now. All the default attendee role is as participant. Recommend keeping that. If you want to record and have folks download your recordings, you can enable that. If you need a course that has anonymous chat messages, you can decide if that's necessary. I like to know who's posting in the chat. What can participants do? They can share their audio, video, chat messages, draw on the whiteboard, etc. So I tend to keep those from there, and then I would just then save those settings from there. Another thing that you might consider doing is right now the room is available 24/7 when anybody wants to go and use it. If you're worried about that, you can come in and lock the course room until you want it available for folks at certain times. It's up to you. So I'll lock it for now just to show you that feature. And the other thing you can do is once you've run a session, you can view reports, so you can see who came in and joined the session. The other thing you can do is if you record a session, up at the menu over here, which is the 3 lines, if I click on it, you'll notice that I can go to recordings. And if I've enabled recordings in here, then they will be listed here. Right now, obviously, I haven't done any recordings, but so they're not available. So I just click back to the menu and go back to my sessions and see my room is available here. It's locked, etc. So that's your online office hours communication tool using a Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Big blue button works in a very similar fashion. And the final tool that I wanted to mention to you tonight that it can engage students, get them talking to one another. One of the key things is interactivity. We want to make sure we have chances for student to student, student to content, and student to teacher interaction. And in relatively high levels, because especially early on, because you really want to create that online classroom experience, that social presence, teacher presence, cognitive presence. So let's look at adding a discussion. So one of the things you might consider doing is having weekly discussions with your students asynchronously. So they're online and students can come in and join the discussion at any point. So how do I do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the discussion board to my menu. Same thing, edit mode on, come over to my menu, click the plus sign and come down to tool link, click that, and I'm going to call it our discussion. Okay, they call it a discussion board. You can call it a discussion area. You can call it whatever you want. What I would suggest, though, is that if you're part of a school and the school has some standards and templates around what to call the menu, how to organize the menu, etc., follow your school's example. That way, students don't get confused if one teacher is using discussion board and another teacher is using discussion, just discussions, perhaps. Making sure the type it matches. So we're going to come down here and there's our discussion board tool right here. I click on it. Again, it just happens to be that these names match. They don't have to. It's just making sure that the functionality is what you want. And I'm going to make it available to users and submit. And it appears at the bottom. And I can drag it up with my other communication tools right there. All right. Whoops. It didn't want to go. It's getting stuck. Oh, you know what it is? This is something that happens to Firefox. So right now in my session, it's not going to do. I'll have to come back and move it back up, but we'll leave it there for now. Okay, let's go into the discussion board. Okay, so what does the discussion board allow us to do? Well, again, it's an online communication area. So what are some of the ways that you can use the discussion board? Well, one of the ones I use it all the time is as a kind of a weekly Q&A. Students want to post a question about the course they're not sure of, and it's almost like a frequently asked questions area. Students can post it there, and then they can reply. You know, it doesn't always have to be you replying through email or something. I encourage students to go to the discussion board, post your question there. Maybe some other students had the same question, and you'll find the answers there. So discussion boards are as a two-phase process. You have to create the forum first, which is the container for the discussion, and then you have to post the actual thread of the discussion. What's the thread all about? So let me do the two-step process. The first step is to create the forum. So I click on Create Forum. I've got the button with Edit Mode on, and I'm going to call it our question and answer forum. Okay. I'm not going to give it a description. I think the title is pretty self-explanatory, and my posting will be describing what I want folks to do. Many people that are come into discussion board for the first time start to actually write what they want students to do in the as a kind of like the threaded discussion right here in the description. It's not the right place for that. You can describe what it's about if you want to, if you want to, but don't actually post the message here. This is just the description, not the message. I'm going to make it available, obviously. I'm not going to set date and time restrictions. You can. I tend to want to leave my discussions, especially question and answer, open all throughout the semester, so students can revisit it at any time. But here's some form settings that we want to look at. Is it graded? Am I grading this as an assessment strategy? Do I want to grade what students contribute to the discussions? You can. So, you know, if you want to grade the discussions, you can certainly give it some points, and it will create a column in your grade center automatically. I'm not going to do that for this. I just want students to have the sense of going in and asking questions as they need to. Do you want to allow members to subscribe to the forum? We do. Here, do you want to allow anonymous posts? I tend not to. I want to make sure that who's ever posting, I know who it is, just so in case there's some inappropriate posting, that sort of thing, that we can get in touch with that student to have them correct that behavior. So for that case, I do allow the author not to delete their own posts, because if I'm grading it, I want to make sure that posts are still there. But I do allow them to edit their own posts, okay, so that if they made a mistake or said something inappropriate, they can go back and correct it. So it's your choice how you want to handle that. Do you want to allow them to create new threads? You can. My recommendation early is that you don't let them create threads, otherwise they can start to get really jumbled at the beginning. Do you want to allow file attachments? Do you want to allow users to reply with quote? I certainly think those are fine. But let me just not allow create new threads for the moment, just because you'll see in a second why I've picked that option. But there is a step that you must do if you do deselect or don't select creating of new threads by users. You make sure you're the first one in there. So let me submit that. And here it is. My forum question and answer form is created. There's nothing in there yet, so I need to go in and create something. So I click on the forum, the container. Now I can create the thread. So this is the two-step process. Create the forum, create the thread. And if you do select create thread, if you do turn that off for students, you must create the first thread. Otherwise, students can't do anything. Okay. Ask your questions here. I'm giving it a subject. What I'm saying in here is I'll write something about if you have a question about the course, ask it, post it here. If you have an answer to a question, post it here too. Let's help each other out. Okay, so I always tend to put this together initially. It's because I want students to help each other, you know, interact with one another, etc. The other thing I do want to do is add, you know, kind of just politeness, hi everyone, that kind of thing. Um, and the other thing I want to show it here is post it here, and how they're going to do that is, I'll put it in parentheses here, by replies to this thread. Okay, perfect. Okay, so then the other thing I want to do is I could sign it, they'll know who it is, and then I tend to do this, I always like to go up again, as I mentioned before, 14-point font. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to submit that. Okay, so we have our discussion board. Here it is. Let me go back and just review. We come in here, we've got our forum, and then they can ask their questions here. So let's make sure it works from the student perspective. So again, the way to do that is to go up to the top and click into the student preview mode. Okay, here we are. And they've got, so let's, our announcements we check, they work. Let's go to email to see if students can email all the users and select users. They can get in touch with each other. That's great. Can they access the online office hours? At the moment, I go in here. They can't. If I click, notice they can't click on this yet because it's locked. If it was unlocked, they'd see a join the session here. So that's working as I intended. I've locked it so they can't access it yet. Again, that's your choice. You might want it to be open all the time. It's up to you. Let's go to the discussion board, make sure that's working. So here we go. I've got the question and answer forum. They'll set one unread post here that they can see. I click on it. Now, if I did not post this thread, students would see nothing here and they can't do anything. So that's why it's critical that you post the first thread if you've disabled create threads. But there is an advantage to that. If I go in and see it, here's my post. Hi everyone, if you have a question, I got to edit this because I've grammatically incorrect. Post it here by replies to this thread. If you have an answer to a question, post it here too. Let's help each other up. So they can reply. They click the reply button and say something like, hi Kevin, my question is, okay? And away they go, okay? And they're gonna submit that. And as you can see the thread it started, that you've got a conversation going from here. All right, good. Now, as I look at this, I see I've made a grammatical error in my text. My name is smaller than the rest. How do I go ahead and look at that? The other thing is here is, notice I made that, I could let the student edit their own posts. So they've got this edit button that they could go in if they did the same thing. They made a grammatical error or they posted something inappropriate, they could edit. So let me just go back and show you. You can always change things. I'm gonna click OK. And one thing about Blackboard too, sometimes to get to where you were left off, you have to click the OK button in the bottom right rather than another button. So just look for that if your navigation starts to get a little wonky at stages. So yeah, again, another OK button to get out of there as well. Okay, I'm going to exit the student preview, keep me in there, and then continue. Okay, if I make a mistake at any time, I can always go back into the discussion board. I can go into question and answer. I can go into my ask your questions here, okay, and I can edit this, okay. So I click the edit button. If I have a question about the course, post it here. Maybe I should just say by replying to this. You have an answer to a question, posted here too. Let's help each other out. And this is too small. Got to bump that up to 14 point, and I'll submit that. And we're back. We're good. Got that set up. Now, if you need to edit announcements, no problem. Edit mode on. You'll get a chevron beside the header or the title. Click on it. You can go and edit the announcement. Come back down here, and you can start to edit it, correct it, add things to it, etc. Whatever you want to do. I won't do it right just yet. I think it's fine for now, so I'll just cancel that. But don't worry, you can always go back and edit things. Okay, so communication. Let me see if this is going to work now. Yes, it did. Okay, so there we go. I've got my communication, announcements, email, discussion board, and online office hours. I also tend to do something to start to divide the menu. If I go up here to the add menu item, I've got something called a divider. If I go down to the divider, it adds a line at the bottom, and then I can just drag that up to here, And that's separated. The top items, the first four, are my communication tools for my students, the critically important communication tools. Okay. Now I know that takes care of some things you might think about for communication. I know I was supposed to go back and show how to get the course outline again. Let me just do that as well. Andre sent you a link, and then I'll do this quickly, and then we'll come back for questions for this part. So Andre sent you a link that will take you to the subject outline system. It's right here, and I'm just going to go back to here. This is what it'll take you to, and I'm going to just come up to here into the quick online search right here. There's a box that says enter your subject code. So if you enter MTH, whatever your subject is, on it, and then make sure you select the next item over is select your school. And in my case, again, School of International Business and Management. So I've got the right semester, got the right school, and there is your course outline. Now, some of you in specialty programs might not have your subject on the subject system. In that case, talk to your chair about what is the official course outline for the program. Okay, I'm going to come back, and that finishes off this section here. I'm going to pause that so we have a chance to ask some questions. Let me bring back up the question section for here. And again, Menti 472659 if you have questions. Andres, any questions about communication tools in MySeneca?
Ooh, we have plenty now. So, okay, so I'll start with a simple one. Can we add pictures to announcements?
Yes, you can. Maybe what I'll show you if I have time at the end. I know, remember, we're not able to do everything tonight, and I just want to mention too that there are some follow-up beyond the basic sessions coming up in the next couple of weeks as well, if you're interested. But you absolutely can add images to announcements, images to discussion board posts, those kinds of things. One of the things I did with math course is when it went online last semester, students would, because they have trouble writing mathematical formula using a like an editor, like a word, it's cumbersome. So what I had them do is just write it on paper, take a picture, and post it up to a discussion board or send it in to me as a picture, and certainly can use it for.
So, in regards to email, if I send an email from here, do I get a copy from the course? Do I get a copy? And follow-up question to that is, if the student replies to that email, where does it go?
Okay, so yes, you do get a copy. You get a copy that will come into your Seneca inbox. That'll say, it'll have the heading, the subject line will have the course code to it. And you'll get a copy, and if a student replies to it, it'll go to your inbox in your Outlook inbox.
And a second question to that email tool that you created on the menu, does that allow the students to email each other?
Yes, it does. And remember that with online environment, we want opportunities for students to interact with one another. Student-to-student interaction is one of the three main types of interaction. So email is one way to do it. And for my course, I'm going to have them in groups, and one of the ways that they can interact with one another, because they're not face-to-face, is they're going to email each other to organize their group project.
Okay, so I'm going to move on over to Collaborate now. For Collaborate, how do you stop the mirror screen?
That is always going to happen, and if you share, I share my entire screen. So when I do that, it's inevitable. You're going to get that because it starts to share wherever your current focus is on whatever browser you're using. So you'll get that. What folks have done to eliminate that, if they find it troublesome, is that if you open your session in something like Chrome, and then go over to Firefox, and then open whatever you want to share there, or open up another application first. That's a good tip, like an Excel file or something. So then when you share, you don't click your entire screen, you just click share the application, and then you won't get the mirroring effect. It will just share the application right away. But I wouldn't worry about the mirroring effect. Just let students know it's going to happen, and everybody does that. It happens all the time. But yeah.
Um, for Collaborate as well, can students use Collaborate without the faculty? Can they use it maybe for group work? What options do we have there?
Yeah, now if you've created groups using the group tool in MySeneca, then you can assign each group communication tools like email and a Blackboard Collaborate Ultra room. You actually get an additional room that students in their groups can go and use, and they be moderators so that they can use, and you can set it up with the settings to be moderators so that they can go in and do everything they need to do as a group team. So that's a good use of the Collaborate Ultra tool as well.
And I think I have a last one for you. Can I use Collaborate to have a one-on-one private session with a student?
You can. Now be wary if you've enabled this the session and you're using the group the room that comes with all the courses. If it's a private conversation, um, then other students can join. You know, if it's enabled, other students can join because they're members of that group. Or sorry, that class. So you might want to be, if you're sharing private information, you might want to think about alternative ways. Maybe create a private session just for a single user. Maybe use a different tool like WebEx that you can create a single session on that. Look at some alternatives for that. But you certainly can if it's just a one-on-one. It's not private information. You just want to walk through some question and answer with students. That's not a problem.
We do have a few questions about the grade center. I know you didn't want to, we don't have a lot of time to cover much of that. Maybe, if possible, can we cover how to show a column that I hit accidentally from myself as an instructor?
Sure.
And I'll
Sure.
leave that as the takeaway for now so that we can
Okay,
move on.
we can move on. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do that. And again, if it slips my memory, I do have it written down. I will get to that, but I'll at some point during our presentation. Okay, so let's move on. We've got a couple more sections to go, I should say. So we want to look at getting your course-ready content tools. And we've covered some of this already. So this one I think will be a fairly quick session because I already know how to use the item and the web link. I'm just going to show you how to use the folder tool. So let's go and take a look at this. Three main tools here that if you're new to MySeneca or whatever reason, folder, item, and web link will work for a lot of content, and you can get by fine just by using these three tools. So we've used the web link already. I've used the item already when I added the link to the course outline and the weekly schedule, but I'll show you how to use the folder too, and maybe think about a folder structure for your courses. The other thing I want to mention is where to go and get content. Some of you might be worried about, well, how do I get this content up there? You don't have to do it all yourself. There are lots of places to go get content. Obviously, you've got yourself. You can, many of us have PowerPoints, or we do narrations, or we create documents for students. Of course, you use yourself as a great resource for content. There's also publishers that have, ebooks, and they might have additional, when you purchase an ebook, many of the publishers have options for additional interactive content that you can access. For example, in my math course, we do use a publisher, and it has online modules and sessions for students to access. The Seneca Library is a great resource. Make sure you get in touch with your library liaison. They can point you to a number of different things like readings, resources, open content, all that kind of stuff. And I do want to talk about open content. There's so much information out there available in an open environment. We have a faculty guide to getting started. If you have an open textbook, maybe you have, you want to look at alternatives to publish your content. And you want to, what can I do? There's many open textbooks out there that you can search for. And the eCampus on Open Library is a great tool. And eCampus has put up together a number of other free tools that you can use to create your own content or remix or share other content as well. So I just wanted to mention those to you, just if you're worried about where do I get all this content in such a short period of time. There's lots of options there. The other thing too is if you're teaching it with colleagues in a same course, then think about sharing the load. So maybe you've got multiple courses with multiple sections, and you've got 3 instructors teaching it. So you say, okay, I'll create weeks 1 and 2. You create weeks 3 and 4, etc. And we'll follow this template. And when you've got the template ready, so you're sharing that content, and there are ways in MySeneca to do that. You can certainly share one section, so you don't have to worry about having to recreate every course and every section from scratch. You just get ready, and then you can copy it over to all the other sections. Okay, I think that is where we're going to go now into our, yes, and I'm going to go back and share my screen. So hang on one second, and I will get back to how do we do the folders, etc. Again, I share it. It's going to inevitably give me the mirroring thingy, but hopefully I have circumvented that quickly. So I'll just ask Andres again. Can you see my screen, Andres? And is the audio still okay?
Audio is okay. I can see your screen and I can see your cursor.
Excellent. Thank you. Just for those of you interested, when you're doing screen sharing in an asynchronous session, what happens with the moderators is they lose the chat focus. So you have to cut. So that's why I have Andres at the background. He can keep looking and seeing what's going on from that perspective. So that's something to get used to when you're facilitating an online session if you haven't done one already. Okay, so let's look at content folders. So I'm going to go into my course. Here it is, my math course. And I left off with the communication areas at the top. I've got some course information that contain the information about the course. And now I want to go into course documents. Course document is where the content would go. So let's go in there. And you'll notice too, it's got that icon beside it, meaning that there's nothing in there yet. So if I turn, watch again what happens with edit mode off, it disappears from my menu because there's nothing in it. So let's put something in there. So I'm going to turn on edit mode again, and I'm going to go into course documents. And maybe I want to set up my week 1 web information. So I can do that by just a simple folder structure. So again, if you're worried about this or new to it, this will work very effectively, and it's just a few items, things that you have to learn how to do. So the first is I'm going to go and build a content folder. Okay, and I'm going to call this week 1 getting started, like so. So it's going to lay the foundation for what's or how the course works, something like that. Again, naming is important. Don't just call it week 1. Give it the context so that whoever's looking at this material knows exactly where to find it. So if you're you're coming back and saying, what was week 1 all about again? You've got the title there with it. I'm not going to bother with the text information again. Be explicit, but you don't have to be redundant. I'm going to let users see the content for sure. I'm not going to track the users, and I'm not going to restrict it date and time. I know of some faculty that like to say, well, I won't enable future weeks until they come about. And so it's your choice. Maybe you want to keep, you're working on some material for week 5 and 6. You just want to hide it for now and be available until week 5 or 6 because you don't want students to jump ahead. You want them to concentrate on the content for the week. It's up to you. I tend to just leave everything open so students can, if they want to go ahead, they can. If they want to come back and see material anytime they can from there. Okay, so I've got my folder. All I have to do is submit that. And here we go, getting started with my folder here. Okay, so it's just a container, just like the discussion board. You create a container. Now you got to fill the container with stuff. So let's go into the folder and let's start building pieces. Now, there is a template that if any of you are taking the foundations of fundamentals of online teaching online, there's going to be recommended templates. Your school might provide you as well with a recommended template for what you want to do. So generally, you do something like this. I would start out with kind of like overview and outcomes. Okay, so what are we going to do? It's kind of like an intro to this unit, this week 1. So, and I would populate it with a whole bunch of stuff, and I will add to this as we go along. Notice my wonderful prose that I'm typing in there, but I just wanted to point out to you that you're giving them, by the end of this week or module, whatever you want to call it, you will be able to. Okay, so you're listing the objectives that they're going to achieve in that week. And the other thing I recommend for online is at the bottom, say something like, this module will take approximately. Okay, so you're giving them the time commitment that they, a regular 3-hour-a-week class, or maybe it's 4 hours because they got some homework to do or something like that. So overview and outcomes, and you would post those as an item. Again, permit users to view. Yep, absolutely. I'm not going to restrict that and just submit. Okay, so they've got the overview and outcomes as they go. Maybe the next item is I want them to read something. Okay, so this would be how the course works. I tend to do this as well. I might say, I let them know this is something that they have to read. Okay, so I'm going to attach perhaps a file here. Okay. So in this section, I'm going to come down and browse my computer, and I've put up a document about how the course is going to work. Okay, somewhere. There it is, how the course works. I'll have to add more to this, and I'm just going to submit that. Okay, so I would have written some outcomes, read how the course works. The next thing I might want to do is, let's go and be multimodal in here. I might want to add a web link to a video. Okay, so I could come in here and click a link, and this could be, this would be a watch item instead of a read item. So this would be watched. Place value, or watch. This might actually, what this might be is a welcome message from me. Maybe you do a little video or something, and I'll give them the URL here. I won't, whatever the URL happens to be, I'll just put in here Seneca College. See, for now, I would put in the proper link in there, and I could then just simply open a new window, sure, and submit. And so I'm building my content. Okay, I've got my overview and outcomes. I got something I want them to read. I want something to watch. And then maybe at the end, you do another little file. Not a file, sorry, because I don't like using file. I picked it by mistake. I'm going back to item, and I'm just going to put in here summary checklist. This is always a good idea for the online environment, that you provide a little checklist, at the end. So you say something like, have you, so maybe pick words a little bit better than that, and maybe you've got a list of items here. Oops, I'm going to go back, enter, and then click that. Have you reviewed the overview outcomes? Have you read how the coursework's documents? How of course, my fingers are all getting bunched together here, and then watched the welcome message, etc. No, so you're just making sure that they've got this, and if you have, congratulations, you've completed week 1 onto week 2. And of course, I would clean that up, etc., as we go along and submit that and make sure it's right. I would go in there, as I mentioned before, bump up the text to something that is more readable. But there you go. And of course, I could have just done this too as a document. I could have put all these into a single document, but it's sometimes when you add multimedia, like links to videos, you want to separate them a little bit so it's not all in one spot. But there you go. I've built my first week of material that I will add, and I come back, and of course, you can edit any of these as you go along. With edit mode on, click the chevron beside, click edit, and you're right back to the web form. You can go in there and start making edits as you go along. Okay, so that, again, I'm cognizant of time. I just wanted to make sure that folks are familiar with that. Let's just summarize that. So what we did in this session is we went into the course documents area, which is where we place content, and we're just using a simple folder structure. I've got week 1 here, getting started, and then I can just simply continue and build my weeks. So I create a new folder now for week 2, like so, and that might be place value. My probably will be place value rounding, and I will then start to add material to there as well. So I'm building my structure as a week-to-week course as we go along. All right, so that's all I wanted to talk about of content. So just to refresh, in a content area, you can get by with content folder, item, and web link. Can do a vast majority of what you want to do in there. Okay, the one thing I know that was mentioned, how do you unhide something that you didn't want to hide? I'll just review that, then I'll come back for another Q&A session. Okay, so how do we do that? So I'm going to go back to the control panel, go down to full grade center, and let's say, here, I'll just do it here, this weighted total, let's say by mistake, I hide it from instructor view, and it's gone, okay? I don't have it available in my full grade center anymore. Uh-oh, what do I do? No problem, you can get it back. So what you do is you go up to where it says Manage. At the top, there's a tab called Manage, and you go to Column Organization. And when you scroll down Column Organization, it shows all of your columns, including the hidden ones. So here we go. Weighted total is grayed out for me, okay? So what I want to do is select it, come down to Show Hide, and I want to reverse the process. Show the select column. So now it's not grayed out anymore. So this is for me. Don't forget to submit that. It does, so don't, if you cancel, it won't take effect. You have to submit the change. And now it's back in my, right there, here it is again, back into my grade center. Also still not available to students because I hid it from student view. Hope that answered the question there for that person interested in how to unhide stuff. Okay, so let me come back. I'm going to go back to the course. Give me a second here. I'll stop the sharing of that. And this again will be another opportunity for folks to, we'll take up some questions. Let me go and find that. We did the content tools. There we go. All right, Andres, any questions?
I have one that I'm not sure even if I know the answer. How can we get a list of all the students with the full email address if we're trying to share something that is outside of Blackboard? I know it's not really related to us, but I figured I'd ask.
Okay, you can do that. A couple of things. If you, outside of Blackboard in the student information system, if you go to the academic area, you can get a full roster of students there. But also in MySeneca, I will show that to you briefly, is where you go down to the users and groups, you can download well, the other thing to do is download your grade center, and it'll give you the usernames for folks. And what I do, because I have needed to do this before, is I just go in and create an Excel spreadsheet and just take the usernames and just add the extension at myseneca.ca to it, and have that populate across my whole selected criteria in Excel. It creates the email list for me. But it can be done. It's a little bit tricky, but it still works.
And we have another question in regards about the folder. Why does it look exactly like an item and you can add stuff to it, sort of like an item, but it's really a folder? Can you post files into that folder description? Should you, or should you just put the items inside of that folder instead?
Yeah, you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would just simply create the folder and post your items in the folder. So what'll happen is if you have a 1 week that's got a lot of stuff that you want students to look at, if you've got that whole mess of things in the folder, it does take up a lot of real estate, screen real estate, and what happens too is some students then, they don't scroll down sometimes, and so they miss the week 3 and 4 that's down there, but they don't get at it because it's not showing on their screen initially. And that's another trick I do use, by the way, is after each week I move the current week to the top of my course documents area, and then the previous weeks then start to be moved down, just so that it's always at the top when students access.
And I think the last one for now is, when do you use the learning module? I know you didn't really
Yeah.
cover it much, but I figured bring it up anyways.
And Learning Module is a great tool. I cover that in MySeneca Beyond the Basics. So if you're interested in learning modules, that's another way to display content, and it's really a handy tool. But I just wanted to point out for the basics section that you don't need it. You can get by with just folders and items and web links just as well. But what I would suggest is keep it consistent. Whatever your level of comfort is with it, if you're at the stage, if you just want to use folders, that's fine. But keep it consistent throughout the semester. If you start with folders, end with folders. The other thing you might want to do is talk to your colleagues. What are the faculty in the other sections using? So that's why I said get together with your faculty group so that everybody's using the same structure in the same program.
I think I'll leave you with that for now. I'm not getting a lot of questions at the moment, but we do have to show how to attach a picture either to an announcement or an item, so they get familiar with
Okay.
that.
Okay, so I've got picture. There was one other thing there. Okay, I will look at that as well. I'll do that as well. I'm going to go back and just talk about a couple of things, and then this is our last section. I know it's a long session tonight, but we'll wrap it up, but for sure by 8 o'clock, and you'll have a chance to answer some more questions. And for some of these questions, if there's specific things, if I have time at the end, I will stick around a little bit to show you how to do that. Okay, so let's go with assessment. And that's the other thing that I think many folks are looking at. How do I do online assessment in Blackboard? And I'm going to show you a couple of things. Again, I do want to preface it a little bit with thinking about your assessments. And because we're online, the thing to think about is start to take a close look at your assessments, about what are the types of assessments that you're using and why you're using them. What are the alternatives for those assessments in order to reach the learning outcomes of the course? So a little bit of assessment stuff to think about is you might want to have assessment in there for as or of learning. So assessments for learning are distilled down to things like diagnostics. So maybe you want to have like a pre-quiz to say, where are my students? What do they know already? And maybe set up a little quiz in Blackboard to see where they're at. And that'll guide you in terms of how much I need to focus on certain things as well. Then this assessment as learning, and it's like the ongoing weekly assessment that it's helping students learn the material. So you might have a weekly quiz, or you might have a weekly task, a discussion post, something that they have to do on an ongoing basis, and it builds towards their learning outcomes. And of course, your summative assessments, your final project, your final problem set, whatever it is. Now, I know many of us are used to final exams in our courses, but you might start to think about what are some alternatives to an exam? Is there something else I could do that would still demonstrate the students reaching the learning outcomes? For there. So I just wanted you to think about that for a little bit before I jump right into Blackboard. So what we're going to look at quickly, the assignment tool, tests, and again, you've already seen discussion boards, and you can use it as an assessment tool. So we've got that covered. So the only thing we have to worry about to finish off is how do we set up assignments? How do we set up tests? And I'm going to go and show you those two things right now. So let's open up my sharing again. And I'll be right with you. We're going to share the entire screen, and I'll jump back here, and I'll ask Andres, can you see my screen? Is my audio okay, and my cursor okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. I see you on the Great Center.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to bump out to, now here's a little thing I do. I'm going to go back up to my menu just to review this. I'm going to go and put a divider in again, and I'm going to scroll that up to here. Hopefully it works. Okay, I'm just going to show you what I tend to do. So where, oh, that's going to be another one of these things with, yeah, it's not going to let me. So let me, it's one of those Firefox issues. Okay, don't worry about it. But what I was going to show you is that I tend to split my menu up into 3 sections. Communication at the top, information. I'll have course documents and assignments as kind of like the content area in the middle. And then I would have at the bottom what I call the administrivia stuff, like the course information, faculty information, my grades, that kind of stuff, tools, Seneca resources, all those kinds of things that manage the course. So I tend to split my menu into 3 items. Okay, that was just an aside there. Let's go back to my weekly schedule. So let's say I'm going into place value and rounding, and I want to do something like put in a little pre-quiz just to see what's happening with folks, as you know, how they're doing, and get them a little bit of practice with the course. Maybe a little bit of assessment, kind of like of as learning, so to speak. So let me go into that weekly folder, and of course here I would have added my overview and outcomes. I'll have to add that again. You know, anything I want them to read, what I want them to watch, what I want them to do, like go and post a discussion, those kinds of things. And one of those things I want them to do is maybe do a little quiz. So with edit mode on, I'm going to come up to assessments, and here I can create a test. And I'm going to create a very simple test from scratch. Again, if you want to learn more about all the assessment options, testing options in Blackboard, we do have that through MySeneca Beyond the Basics as well. So let me go into test. And just like discussion boards, just like folders, it's a 2-step process. You create the container, and then you deploy that container. So in our case for tests, we have to create the test, and then we have to deploy the test. 2-step process. There are no tests available at the moment because I'm just starting out, so I'm going to create it. So I click the create button. Okay, it gives me a form. Let's fill it out. Okay, so this is going to be our quiz 1 on base value. Oh, I can give it a description if I want. Again, I'm not going to. I think the title is self-explanatory. I can give them instructions. Now, one of the things you can do in here is you know, the Blackboard will insert the instructions automatically. So if you make it a time test, if it's multiple attempts, all that kind of stuff, it will add that material there. But some of the instructions that you might want to think about is perhaps a little statement around you know, academic integrity. So that you're saying by clicking the begin to start this quiz, you affirm that you won't be giving or receiving help. It'll be your own work, original work, and etc. So and we have a copy of that statement available on the academic continuity site, I believe. If not, it'll be there shortly if you want to use it. So that's something that some folks do tend to add in there. So right now, all I need to do is to add that title. And I'm going to continue by clicking submit, and I get to what's called the test canvas. So here's where I can create the questions. So at the top here, you'll notice I've got create question. And again, if you go into MySeneca Beyond the Basics, we'll tell you how to reuse questions and upload questions. Those things will be discussed. But right now, we're just going to create a simple quiz right from scratch, just using the create question area. So I mouse over create questions. I've got all kinds of different question types. For online learning if you're just starting out, to make your life easier, stick to the basics and tried and true type of test questions, true and false, multiple choice, and then perhaps short answer or essay type questions. There are a lot of different options here. Not all of them are accessible. Like for example, hotspot, where you have an image and you have to have people click on a certain spot on the image. Think about accessibility as well. So if you stick with true, false, multiple choice, essay, or short answer, you'll be fine. So let me create a simple true, false. Okay, and you get a form, and you just like we did before, you fill out the form and then you click submit. Now the title is something that so I'm going to call it Q1 question 1. Let's just say that. I'm just using a code here. This is only for your own purposes to organize your questions. Students don't see this, so don't worry about it. Just call it, something, Q1, question 1. In the question text with the orange asterisk beside it, that's where you have to enter your question. So let me go and find a question. I believe I have added that. Let me go and I'm just going to go and I've written these questions before. Here we go. Quiz 1's questions. Here we go. So, all right. So I already started generating some questions here. Okay. Let me come back. So I'm going to post this. Got the T at the beginning. That's okay. I'll just add it here. And again, I like to bump this up a little bit. Okay. So this question says the number 3,925,070,132 in standard form is that number, true or false? So it's just a simple true or false question. Okay, so what are my options? You have vertical or horizontal. I tend to always go with vertical. So it means that will the false and true appear, or true and false appear as one on top of the other or beside each other? I always go with vertical, and that's because many students are using their phones, and screen real estate is really key, and horizontal scrolling is very difficult on phones, depending on what orientation they pick. So I always go with vertical. It seems to work. So the other thing I do is this the right answer? I think it is. I have to double check. Yeah, I think it is. So the answer is true. I keep it as true. It's by default set to be true. If not, I'd click false. And then feedback. If I want students to learn from this, then I'll say, if they got the right response, well done. Give them some encouragement. And if they did the incorrect response, what happens? Well, I want them to go, please review Unit 1. Okay. And I'd probably spend a little bit more time in here with the wording, etc. But maybe even point them to a specific spot in which video they to watch, those kinds of rewatch, that kind of stuff. But I'll just leave it like that for now. Category for the question, you can set level of difficulty. This might come in handy later on if you want to reuse a question, you're not sure how difficult the question was. You can certainly add that. Maybe make it a beginner. I tend to use 3 levels, beginner, intermediate, and more advanced type questions, but I'll just leave that blank for now. And then we'll just submit that. And so we got our first question. Here it is. This is the number. It's showing us the question in our quiz. It's got the feedback. It's got if it's true or false, that sort of thing. Now, the other thing you'll notice up here is how many points it's valued at. By default, our system has 10 points for every question. I don't think this one's worth 10 points. Maybe it's just worth a single point. So I'm just going to change that. Whoops, I forgot to submit. So you have to click 1, submit, and that'll change the points. That's one area where you need to pay particular attention to make sure your points for your questions are within range that you've set. So if you forget about it, you could have a true-false question worth 10 points. All the other ones are worth 1, which just throws it off balance there. Okay, so I've got a true-false question, no problem. Started a 1-question quiz. So let's make it a little bit more robust. We're going to add a multiple choice. So I go create another question, multiple choice. So again, this will be question 2, quiz 1, question 2. My scheme, what's the question? Well, let's go and bring back what was another one? For this number, what digits is in that? Okay, perfect. So here we go. So I come in here and I'm going to write this number. Again, I go up here and I increase the font. For this number, which digit is in the 10,000s place? Well, that would be the 3. Okay, so how do I want to do it? I'm going to answer numbering. You have choices whether or not you use different numerals, uppercase, lowercase. Keep it at none. Again, it's that redundancy factor. The students will still get an option, a bubble to select, so just keep it at none. Again, keep it vertical. Do you want to allow partial credit? In this case, no. Show answers in random order? Sure. Why not? Be careful with this, though. It's one of the randomization things that'll help, so students don't always get the exact same test. Be careful, though, if you have questions like, you say, all of the above are incorrect or all of the above are right. If you randomize the order, that's going to be meaningless because sometimes it'll jumble up the A, B, C's around it, and all of the above might be letter A, which doesn't make any sense. Okay, so how many answers do I want? I'll keep with 4. I could make it 5. I could do whatever I want there. I think the minimum is 4. You can go up to as many as you like. It always assumes your first answer is correct. You don't have to go with that. So if I go up and look at my question here, and I see that I've got, so the 3 is the right answer. I've got 4, 9, and 8. 2, how about 2, 1, and 9? Okay, I'll put those ones in there. So 2, is that the right answer? That is not the right answer. So I'm gonna come down here and put 3 and make that one correct. So I've made the second answer the correct answer. Okay, and there was one there about 9, I think. Sure, and that was not the right answer, obviously. And then the other thing you can do is things like okay, you can do things like none of the options are correct. So it's a little different. Students might are not just seeing numbers. They think, oh, geez, maybe the answer isn't displayed as one of the options. I need to think about that a little bit more. I'll just leave it like that for now. Okay. Again, do you want to give feedback if they got it right? Well done. And if they got it wrong, incorrect response, a review. Unit 1 again. Again, I would spend more time on this thinking about what the feedback, I direct them more specifically to the type of feedback that you want. I'll submit that. So I've got 2 questions going, okay? Again, 10 points, okay? Do I want that? Just make it 1, submit. Okay, all right. So I've just shown you a couple there. If you want to do a short answer type, you would just come in here and do a short answer. I'll just show that to you. I'm not going to do it here, okay? Again, I put in a question title. I give it a text. Notice too, I've got the 3 layers of tools here. I can add an image. By the way, this is how you'd add an image. Maybe it's a picture of a math formula, something like that. You can add the image there. I'll go and show that to you in a minute. You can add a file, attach a file to the short answer if you want them to download a file and look at it as part of the, read this passage, then go and write something. In your title, etc. Okay, and of course for the short answer, it's how many rows will you be displayed. In the short answer, it's a maximum of 6 rows. If you need more than that, then use the essay format. Okay, and sometimes in my math tests, I might do something like I use a short answer where I say, all right, what is this rounded to the nearest unit, okay, or the nearest dollar? And then explain your answer. How did you come about doing that? So I want them to explain in words how they came about the answer rather than just providing the answer. I won't add that question to my quiz at the moment. And the reason is, if I add a short answer or an essay type question, then it has to be manually marked by me, which is fine, that's perfectly fine. But in this case, I just want it to be a quick and easy kind of quiz. They can go in and see their results right away. The Blackboard will grade it for them automatically, and they can go from there. So it's just I would obviously never use a 2-question quiz, but I'm just going to stop there for the sake of time, and I could keep adding questions into this quiz as we go along. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now, and that's going to be our quiz. And again, when I'm done, I click the OK button at the bottom here, and it's set the quiz. Now when I come back to my area, it's showing that I do have a quiz, a test now. It's called Quiz 1, Place Value and Rounding. So I've done the first step. The second step is then to deploy the test. So that's what we have to keep going then to put it somewhere. So I click Submit. Okay, and then I've got the test here. Now here's all your test options. Do you want to open the test in a new window? So I tend to say no. The navigation can get wonky. So if you're unsure, always just keep it to no. Don't open a new window. Unlike web links, where I always recommend you do open them in a new window. Do I want to make it available to students? Absolutely, I want them to use it. Do you want to add an announcement for this test? You may want to add, hey everybody, the test is up. Go and check it out. Do you want to allow multiple attempts? Maybe if I'm doing a practice test. So one of the things I do for online learning is I want to make, especially if it's first semester students, is I don't want them to have to learn how to write the test whilst they're trying to write the test. So I always have a practice test where they can go and see the similar types of questions I'm going to ask, the similar format, where it doesn't matter. They can try it as many times as they want, just so that they'll learn how to write the test, okay? So in this case, I'll use it as multiple attempts, They can have it can do as many times as they like until they get the right answer. And I'll just go with, I give them the highest grade. Sure. Force completion. We're not recommending that you select force completion. And the reason is if a student runs into some technical issues, they close their browser by mistake, their internet goes down whilst they're doing this. If you put force completion, then they can't get back in. So don't pick force completion. Maybe I do want to set a timer though. This one's be a really fast thing, 5 minutes for this one. And I do tend to use auto submit. I turn that on. So after 5 minutes, whatever the student's done up to then, it'll be just shut down and submit what they've been doing. I can then set a window of time that the quiz will be available, and we recommend this for online tests or quizzes. Give a reasonable window. So don't just make it like you've got half an hour on Tuesday from this to this to write this quiz. The problem is, think about where your students are coming from. Many of my students are international students, so they might be coming from anywhere in the world. So I want to make sure that they have a reasonable window to come in and write the test, and so that they're not disadvantaged, like having to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to write a quiz that I've set for Eastern Daylight Time. You can set a password if you want. I tend not to. I want to reduce the barriers for the testing, so I don't put a password in there. But this is very important, test availability exceptions. So if you have students that are accommodated students, so for example, I can come in here, let's say myself might have an accommodation where I need time and a half. So I get to select myself in this case, and then I can tell, okay, I need 7.5 minutes, or maybe double time. Maybe I need 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes. So I can set just for me 10 minutes. Maybe, if you've, sometimes it might be additional attempts that you're allowing. Also, sometimes it might be that, for that particular student, they can write it at a different day and time than the rest of the class because they have some issues. Maybe they've got a medical appointment, or they've got something that they can't write during the window that you've got available. So you can check their availability and change that for that particular person. Okay, so I've given myself full time for this quiz. I can set a due date when it's due, and this helps with things like in the Grade Center and the My Grades area. I won't do it right now. You don't have to set a due date. Do you want to include this test center in the score calculations? Sure. So it'll automatically create a column in the test center for this quiz. How do you want to show the results when they're finished? Well, maybe I don't want to show anything until after the due date. So I need to go back and set a due date. This is one way to do it, where if you've got 3 sections, everybody's writing the same quiz, one on a Tuesday, one on a Wednesday, one on a Thursday, so you want everybody to see the results, but not till Friday. So if I set a date like today due today at some point, I don't know, we'll set it for tomorrow at this time, and then I can say, well, after the due date, show everything, give them all the answers, all the correct, all submitted, feedback, that kind of thing. So that's one way you could do it. Now, or if you don't want to, maybe it's a summative thing where you don't want to show the results, you could just lock everything up and just show the score. Or you don't even show score per question, you just show them, don't give them anything except it will show them their final score. Now, for my case, this assessment is just to have fun with it, learn how to use the assessment tool. So I'm not going to set a due date. They can go anytime. And after submission, after they do it, they can see everything. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. There you go. They can see the feedback so they can learn from it, assessment as learning, and show incorrect, all that kind of stuff. Now, do you want to show it all at once? Do you want to show it one question at a time, or prohibit backtracking? For a quiz, I always show it all at once. And the reason is, sometimes students get confused with one at a time. They only think it's one question. They forget to go and click the next button to go to the next question, that kind of thing, until they learn how the tool works. If I did select one at a time, if it was a bigger test, and so there's lots of questions, I never prohibit backtracking. And it's the same because if a student was writing a test in a classroom, they'd have the ability to go back and review question 1. So I don't do that. I just allow them to go back because they might think later, oh, I remember now what I was supposed to do in question 1, that kind of thing. So for this such a short test all at once, I'll randomize the question. Another layer of randomization here. So every student doesn't get the same order of questions. So because it's only 2 questions, one student might get 1, 2, and the other student might get 2, 1 is the order of questions. And then I'll submit. Okay, so here it is. It's deployed. It's available. Students can go in and do this question. So now's a good time for me to go into student preview mode. Remember myself, I was in there. I can go to my course documents, and I think in the week 2 folder, I've got the place value rounding quiz. Here we go. Again, the instructions are, as I mentioned, automatically populated. Now I get 10 minutes because remember I got time and a half. So it knows that Kevin Pitts gets 10 minutes. It'll be saved automatically. You can do this multiple attempts. All those things I checked or checked off in the test options. Let's go and begin just to make sure it works as agreed. So here's my timer timing counting down from 10 minutes. So here's the question, is this true or false? I'll just select a couple of options here and I'll just, how am I doing? I'll do one right, one wrong and see what happens. And then I'll save and submit and say, okay, here we go. And then now students come to see here, let them know that at the bottom there's this OK button to get your results. So here we go. I showed them everything. So I got that one wrong. The true answer was true. I said false, and the feedback that was given. In this one, I got it right, and well done. So it looks like I might want to go back and try it again and see if I can get the first question. I'll click OK. So I've tested it as a student. It's working as expected. Everything's good. And I can always, now let me exit the preview. I'm going to keep myself in the course, continue. Okay, and then you can always, if you go back to a test, course documents again, go back to here, I can always edit this. Edit mode on. If I found a mistake, click on the chevron beside it, go back to edit the test or edit the test options, and you can go back and make those changes. I won't, show you that right now. I'm just looking at the time. We got a few more minutes left. So I just want to make sure you're aware of those options. You can always edit stuff after you've posted it. Last thing, maybe I just want to put a little assignment in here. So I'm going to come up to assessments again and click on assignment. Okay. And maybe what I want to do is just call this the, first assignment, assignment part 1. And in the instructions here, I just say review the instructions in the attached document. Okay, so I've got a document that contains instructions on how to do the assignment, and I've written it from including what outcomes the assignment addresses, etc. Oops. How it's getting towards the end of the night, I can't type anymore. I think that's about right. I don't know why it's telling me attached is spelled incorrectly, but here we go. Make it bigger. Now I'm going to attach a document to this, which is the assignment. So I go browse my computer, and I've got one here called assignment part 1. There it is. Again, I made it as a PDF, so just so students can read it. It's going to be due sometime in the future. I think it's due at the end of May. We'll call it Friday. I usually give till the end of the day to hand it in, and it'll be worth, I don't know, 25 points. Add a rubric if I wanted to, and again, if you're interested in rubrics, they're a great time saver for online marking, you can. Couple of things here is submission details. Is it an individual submission? Is it group submission? You can check that off. How many attempts do they get? Sometimes, you might want to allow a couple of attempts so you give students get a chance to get feedback from you and then resubmit. And that's the last graded attempt is what you're going to do. Do you want to check it for plagiarism? So if you do, you have the option to check using SafeAssign. And I always allow my students to see the SafeAssign originality report. And then if I look at the grading options, you can allow anonymous grading if you don't want to see the student name. Generally though, I always see the student name. I don't select any of these. How do I want the grades to be displayed in the grade center? Primary display is the score, so out of 25, or maybe I want to make it a percentage. Secondary display is only for you. You don't see that in the grade center. So maybe if I select percentage, I will see the score there for myself. And of course, I want to include in the grade center calculations. I want to show to students in my grades. Absolutely, you want to show your student score. Do you want to show average and median statistics for this column? for this column to students? Sure, if they want to see how they're doing compared to their peers, I can set the availability, etc., and then I submit. Now I did go over that fairly quickly, I know, just for the sake of time, but oh, and I can see I've spelled assignment wrong. No problem. Click here, edit, come in here, delete that extra I, scroll down and submit. Perfect, now we're good. All right, so let's test this now as a student to make sure it works, and I strongly encourage you to do that. Clicking on entering student preview, going into the course documents area, go to place value. There's my assignment 1. I can download the assignment. There it is, okay? It's actually the winter one. I haven't changed it to summer yet. But if I go into assignment part 1, then I can see it's worth due on that date, points possible. I'm seeing exactly as a student. I can browse my computer and attach my submission. And down here is I agree to submit my papers to the global reference database for plagiarism checking. And then if I'm ready as a student, I would then just submit my assignment once it's ready. So that's how the student experience is. And I, again, highly recommend that you do check the student experience. Let's, as a student too, check my grades. You'll notice that my grades are starting to be populated in the Grade Center. See the quiz I got? I did it and I got 1 out of 2. And then I've got the assignment coming up due on May 29th. And I haven't got graded for that obviously yet because I haven't posted it, but I can go in and check that. I'm not seeing the total column or the weighted total column. So there we go. I've got a couple of assessments in there. I wonder if this is going to work now if I change my dividers. I'm going to keep myself, come out of student preview. I've tested it. Okay, and scroll that up. Let's see if it works now. Yes, it does. So I can move that down. Oh, leave that up there. That's what I do. Course information down, assignments in there. So that's the content stuff. And this is, sometimes you can put my grades up there. So there's my 3 sections of my course. Okay, I'm going to come out now because I'm looking at it's got 2 minutes left till 8, and we got the last thing for questions to go. And then I know I've got a couple of things to show for those folks that asked a couple of other questions, and I'll stick around and answer those, but I want to be cognizant of time. So let me come back to, here we go, stop sharing there, and I'll ask Andres, do we have any questions for the last section?
We do have a few. The first one is more about when you create a test, does it automatically create a grade center column?
Yes, if you do choose it to be included in the grade center column, it does, absolutely.
There's another question. It's more around the display and the time window that we allow the student. So you had the timer. So let's say I set my test to be 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But I give a display window of 4 hours.
Yeah.
Let's say the last hour or ending at 12 o'clock. Let's say my student shows up at 11:30 or 11:50 to submit that test. Is he still allowed those 30 minutes?
Yes, the student will still be allowed as long as they enter at some point in that window. So if a student came in 1 minute before the window closed, they'd still get the full time for the test. The problem with that, though, is if a student has issues and their internet freezes, then when they come back, they can't get back into the test. So, but they will get their full time.
And then since we talked about assignments also, how do you grade an assignment? How do I access what they submit basically?
Yeah, so there is a thing called inline grading, and we have a video about that, about how to do that. I won't have time to show that tonight, but if you go to the MySeneca the MySeneca Beyond Basics, we will cover inline grading in that. But you can also check our teaching site. So one of the things as well, I know folks are getting, it's 8 o'clock and we people want to move on to other things. So let me go back to, where did I go? Just to show a couple of things around where to get resources. So our academic continuity website has a lot of information. MySeneca help website has a lot of help documentation, extensive help documentation, as well as the teaching and learning site. And Andres has posted that in the chat for everybody. So there's some resources there. support. Where do I go for support? You can go to our online teaching and assessment support. There's a support form that you can ask questions about that. Blackboard training is coming. There'll be more training coming up through teaching and learning, and you can also email bbsupport@senecacollege.ca if you have any technical issues with Blackboard. And IT support is available too through the request for support form. Okay, so I just wanted to wrap that up because I know everybody's it's just 1 minute past 8 o'clock, and I know that some folks have to go. So if those folks want to head out, and thank you very much for coming tonight, you can certainly do so. If you want to hang around a little bit, I'll answer a couple more questions, and then we'll call it an evening. So thank you again for coming. Hope you're feeling a little bit more ready to look at MySeneca. And again, help is available and to reach out for help as needed. So any more questions, Andres, that folks have?
So I thought you were going to prep the poll. Are we just skipping that completely? Or you want
Oh,
to
should we
do
do
the
the
poll?
poll?
I think
All right.
you could do the poll. In the meantime, I'll talk about something. There was a few technical questions that were brought up that I did not ask you, and I know that. So for those of you that are sending those technical questions, I do apologize. They're a bit technical for Kevin to try to explain them through the presentation process. So please contact us via bbsupport@senecacollege.ca, and we can definitely take those offline to answer them more in detail. I just didn't want Kevin to sort of lose all the time that he had to do this whole presentation because they're a bit technical, so I'd rather take them offline. And
Okay.
I have a few more questions, but I'll wait until you do the poll, and if we don't have much to cover towards the end, we can call those two the last ones.
Okay, my poll's just coming. I'm just writing it. Oh, writing it now, and then we'll have that. Here we go. It's coming up in 10, 9, 2, go. There it is. So how are you feeling now about using MySeneca? Are you ready? Ready but need some more help? Are you not ready yet? And other. So we've got some brave folks who stuck out all the way to the end and are okay. And I'll reveal the answers. Okay, good. I think most folks got it. Let's take a look. Here we go. So what we've got is that folks are feeling ready, but most folks are feeling ready, but need some more support. Absolutely, totally understood. A lot of you are feeling all ready to go, which is awesome. That's great. And and if you're not ready yet, again, don't worry. Help is available. Reach out for that help. Okay, so that's our poll. So let's go to. Thank you again for participating in the poll and for coming tonight. Andres, any more last minute wrap-up questions?
I think I want to leave you with the last one, and then we can do the grade center hide and show. There's a question of how do you create a test for a single student or group of students, but you don't want everybody else to see it, if that's an option, basically.
Yeah, you can. There's a couple of techniques for that. You can. You still have to deploy any test you do. You have to deploy it. So. But then you just set the availability for that test. So what a lot of folks do is they would write a test for whatever reason, and they set the date for everybody else to some time in the future, like next semester. But then when you go to the test exceptions, go in there and allow that one student to write it, tomorrow or next week or whenever you want them to write it. And they're the only ones who can actually access the test. Everybody will see the test as a link to say that there's a test there, but only that one student can access it. So there's a couple of other ways you can do it in terms of using groups, but I think that's probably the most straightforward way to do that. But it can be done.
Yeah, I agree. With the display start and stop dates, I personally always suggest it to be in the past, and then you just use the test exceptions for the specific students that need access. And if you do that, actually, no, only the student that needs the access will see the link. Everybody else is like they already did it, and unless you're showing that specific grade center column, they're not going to know it was there.
Yes, good point. Good point. Okay, is
So
that the last question?
I think so. I wanted you to actually cover that accidentally retrieving a hidden column from an instructor view on the Grade Center.
Yeah.
Like how do we basically get anything we hide from the Grade Center? And I think we could call it a night at this point with that.
Okay, did I not do that already? I already went in and showed them how to unhide, but I could do it again. Do you want me to do it again?
I'm seeing it coming up again, so that's why I
Okay,
thought we
go.
did,
Okay.
but maybe we could just do
No,
it
no.
again in a second.
Yeah, sure, absolutely no problem. If that's an important part. So let me go in and do that. Okay, just Andres, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So let me go down to the grade center, full grade center. Oh, the other thing was to add an image to an announcement or something. That was another thing people wanted to know how to do, right?
Yes.
So here, let's take this weighted total, for example. If I click here and accidentally click hide from instructor view instead of hide from students, and it disappears, so I can't see it in my grade center. To get it back, you go to manage the grade center, column organization. It gives you a list of all the items in your grade center, including the hidden ones. Find your hidden weighted total column, select it, click the check mark there, and then go to show hide and then say show selected columns, and then don't forget to submit at the end. And now it comes back, it's back in my grade center, and it's still not available to students because of the red line through the circle. Okay? And the second thing that folks wanted to know how to do is adding a picture to the announcements. Okay, so if I go to announcements, I can go to my welcome announcement here. I'll click on it. I'll go to edit. I'll make sure that I've got my 3 layers of tools. Go over to the icon that is the add an image icon. Pops up a form to fill out. So I go and browse my computer and find the image. Maybe I'll just put my I got an image of myself. I'll just pick that. Not that I would put it in there, but there it is. And the description for access AODA requirements, you do need to put in the image description. So it's an image of or it's a face shot or portrait, something like that. And I'll insert that, and then it appears in there, and I could move that down, and I've got my picture in there, and I would submit that, and now my announcement has a picture in there as well. Okay. Anything else that I miss in terms of what folks wanted to learn how to do?
I think we got everything. I think you covered almost everything that everybody was asking, either a repeat or in questions.
Great. All right. So on that note, again, for those that stuck it out right to the very end, let me just turn that off. Sorry. Okay. And thank you very much for coming. And look for some new sessions coming up in Blackboard Beyond the Basics next week. You can check Teaching and Learning, the MyPD, etc. Have a great night, everyone.